Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of the 7th coding challenge video where we're going to be continuing creating this object model viewer builder, which you can connect to any Adobe application and build the sort of built-in object model viewer which detects all the objects, properties, and methods. Last time we basically left off by creating this which will display the sort of base layer of all the properties and methods. We came across a few problems like the effects displaying bizarrely, and today we're going to try and fix some of these problems, make sure we're reading everything properly, and we're also going to set up some styles to make this a little bit more pretty. Before we get started, I do want to remind you down below, hit subscribe and the bell icon to be notified of new videos coming out twice weekly on the channel, and down in the description you can check out the code for this in the GitHub link, try it out for yourself, make any modifications you want. Make sure you follow us there for coding updates, and in the description as well you can follow us on Instagram for other updates. If you're not already a member, you can join our Discord server and get help with scripting, extensions, plugins, expressions, and just communicate with community members and a lot of our VIPs and other people. Shout out to today's shout out member, Jay Pearl, who makes amazing plugins that I myself couldn't even make, but he's shown some really cool stuff off. And if you need help with plugins, he's a great help for that. And also, if you want to become a channel member, you can become a member supporter, premium supporter, or VIP. Get cool perks like code in advance, weekly live streams, and a whole bunch of other cool things. So we're going to dive straight into this. If you haven't already checked out the other video, make sure you do, so you are up to date on what is going on here. We're basically generating an HTML file with our script here, and we're now going to first figure out why our effects are doing this. So one of the things I did to check whether or not we just need to display the information, like in this case we have a method called activate and it tells us what the method itself is, but sometimes we have an object it returns. For example, the active viewer returns us with an object. The effects returns us with an object, actually many objects, and you can see they're being displayed here. So what we need to do is check if that object has many things within it. And we need to basically find where the effects object is being generated, and I think that should be approximately here. If our sub object, or is it our base object? We have our app I. Let's go ahead and create a right line. And just because it's been a little bit since I worked on this, I need a quick refresher. I want to write whatever I is here, which apparently doesn't want us to do. If I just say, I should be finding an instance of our object. Oh, I forgot I need to link this to After Effects, of course. And you can see these are the different objects we're getting. We're getting active viewer, available GPU XL types, effects, preferences, project, which will be important as well, and settings. So that is what our current I is going to be. And if we find that we get an object, we're going to loop through that sub object, which in this case is going to give us a whole list of all the effects installed, which we don't want, because that's 436 in my case. What we want to do maybe instead, how do we get the length of an object? That's my question. JS length of object. I should know this, but usually I just loop through. I guess we need to set a custom function. Let's just say create a function called length of object. Give it an object. We'll create a counter variable and set that to 0. And whatever the counter variable ends up being will be the length. We're going to say for var c in object counter ++. And that should just give us the length of our object. So then what I'll do, now that we're in our sub object here, we may only want to do that if it's equal to 1. Let's say right line length of object and we're going to give it our sub object, I believe. So you can see here our active viewer has 6 sub properties or sub objects. Available GPU Excel types is 5. The effects has 440. I don't know why it's displaying beforehand. Project has 60. So maybe the length is not the right thing to be looking at here. Settings has 3. See, one thing is the effects is giving us sub objects. That's why these are bold and I believe that's an H3. The active viewer has 6. 1, 2, 3. So I think what we're gonna do, comment this out. This is the loop we're using to loop through all of the object properties. But we need to set something else to say if it's not null and sub object A is not an object. So I'll say instance of object, and we'll inverse the logic. Now let's go ahead and run that and see what we get. Now you can see we're not getting all those effects displayed. So that's good. We're getting some strange, these just are like values, like enumerated values. Let's go ahead and load up the scripting guide really quick. And I want to see if we look at our, for example, project object, what might these values be? Bits per channel, 32. Compensate for scene reference, true. Dirty, I'm actually not even familiar with this. Dirty, project.dirty. Dirty projects will have an asterisk in the project window title. That's interesting. That's false, it's not dirty. Display start frame is 0. The expression engine is JavaScript 1.0. That's good. So we need to actually display these property names as well, not just their evaluated values. So we need to I think it's being displayed here. Let's go ahead and say test. I'm just going to insert some text that says test there. So you can see that's what's creating that in particular. We need to also basically grab then, we need to say if this is a property, as we have here, and then display the name of the property itself. So I'll copy the name from this, and we'll paste it in here. This needs to be A. Now we have our property called bits per channel, 32. Property called compensate for scene reference, etc. So that's good. It goes down a bit deeper. What's next here? If we go up to our active viewer, we have a property called active. The one thing I don't like about how this is working is that it's displaying these values based on the current project, which I don't necessarily want. Like, for example, the app name is a property, and we actually write what the evaluated value is. In this case, it's After Effects. So I guess it's fine for now. But what is next here? Under project, we should have items or something. Like, we need to be able to get down to the compositions and things. We have our num items, which is actually 0. Let's bring in some items here just so we can have those. And just going to change the value here to 4. So we have app.project.items. We need to make sure we have access to that. We have num items here. How do we get the actual items? I feel like that should be, it's before linear blending and after GPU Excel type. It's not displaying that. Let me check in my data browser here. We have app, project, is language, effects. Oh, sorry, I need to scroll down more. Dirty file, GPU Excel, import file, items. This should be triggering it like right here. Let me make a right line, right to A. Nothing. But if I do this, oh, sorry. I guess we'll just do A and B. We get all B's, which is saying that all of these subproperties are not objects. But the evaluated value is sometimes an object. It should be, at least for items. So let's say sub object A. Ooh, a lot of information to display. These are the evaluated values. So is it the property we need to check for? Bits per channel. See, it's totally skipping items. That's a bit of an issue. Let's check in this else, maybe. Right line C and we'll alert I. Now, if we go in here, it's still missing it. So it seems to be skipping over the items itself. I'm gonna set up an alert here that says current object is called. And we're gonna add in, I guess A. And then I'm going to write both of these. I'm just trying to identify if it's able to read that at all. Current object is called active. Let me make sure it's oh boy. That's gonna run through all of the effects. So I gotta hold this down for 430. So basically I want to see why this is going from GPU Excel to linear blending. We're skipping the items, which is an important thing to access because inside of items we have any potential other stuff that we could access. And we need to see if we're unable to read it or what. Okay, so we definitely don't want to alert that. Let's go ahead and just run this again. It might freak out the JavaScript console. I guess this is probably a little too much for it. Okay, so that's a lot of objects. Oh, please don't refresh. Okay. I'm gonna copy all this and then that should be fine. Put it in a notepad so that I can better search for it, hopefully. Come on. Definitely need to reduce the amount of right lines we're using here because that's causing some serious issues. Copy and paste. I'm going to search for item, active item. Found something called item. Item by ID, items. There it is. Item collection before linear blending. It's an object. So we need to say, we're saying if sub object A is not null and it's not an object, where's the else case for if it is an object? Let's try this. Also, let's remove the million right lines. We'll just throw in a, where's our other object case? Throw in this, and we'll just say A, I guess. Illegal use of else, which means you probably have it somewhere else. Sub-object A is what we need to evaluate. We don't have items in here, do we? It's not an instance of a comp item. Don't know if we should be doing that quite yet. Do we get items if we re-include that? We do. So we definitely shouldn't do that. But here, if this is the code that says, I believe it's an item or something. This is tricky. Let's say if length of object sub object A is greater than 1, I guess. We'll do something. Otherwise, do whatever the default here is. There's a lot of sub-if analysis, which is why this is starting to get a little bit confusing. Here, we're just going to say, right, that, I think. Comment this out. Oh. Are we doing too much? Getting some unresponsiveness. Let's make sure we save it before we try this out. refresh our page here. Nothing updated. If we go in here, I just want to know what A is. Index of reload. These are not objects. These are indeed methods. So this may be the wrong bit of code to be adding this to. First thing we're saying is if subobject A is .toString. I think the first thing we need to check is if it's a straight up object. But we have that down here actually. So let's remove this. Make sure we're not forgetting the code. Else, if it's an object, write that object. Is that going to write all of our effects still? Seems so. If I remove this, will it remove that? Yes. Let's go back to our project area. Import file, item. So this is where we need to make an adjustment. Let's first ask to write the length of our object called subobject A, which I assume is going to give us a whole bunch of greater than 1 values. Yeah, mostly 4, actually. So I think it's just a matter of us choosing which ones we don't need. You can see we have items here. That's what we want, but the effects, there's too many and we don't want all those effects. Maybe we just need to have a single check. If the property is called effects, then just stop it. But if it's something else, then there's more information that we want to display. Active item, items render queue. What are all these numbers from? Those are all the effects. Views. So A is the number of the effect. And subobject A is the object of the effect itself. So it needs to be done before we get in here. Let's say if hold on. Let me get subobject. Because A is the sort of, I guess, index, you could say. So we'll say subobject. I'm hoping that gives us effects, because then we can just say if it's not effects, then do it. What if we just say if the length is greater than 100? Let's not do it. This is just returning a whole lot of objects. if sub object, if length of object sub object is less than 50, I guess. Let's see how that affects it. All right, we'll call that good. Do we have items? I'm mainly concerned about the project items here, which are now no longer being displayed. $20? Or does it need more? Let's see what the length of all of our sub-objects are. Hopefully you guys can somewhat follow along. This is sort of the deep, difficult part of processing all this. I think 60 is the number. Let's just say 70 for good measure. All right, now I think we got generally the information we want here. This is good. If we write something in here, which ends up being these sub-objects like items or root folder or selection, then I want to alert or write line what these actually are, and I think we might need to go one level deeper. So now the items we're looking at are views, active item, items, render queue, root folder, selection. If that's the case, let's go a sub-level deeper. Okay, so we'll say pretty much the same kind of deal. For, we need a new variable for var j in, let's make a variable called sub-object. And we'll set sub-object equal to sub-object A. And we're going to go for var j in sub-object. For now, let's just do the typical displays. So we'll say j and sub-object j. Now, this should give us the sub-properties for our render queue and our items and all of that. You can see there's actually quite a bit of code being displayed here. Index of actually shows us the code it's using. Items gives us a render queue list. That's part of the render queue list. This is quite a bit of data. I think now we can just kind of try and display it the same way as all these other ones. So we'll say if sub-object is a method, otherwise if it's an object or whatever, we'll do that. Let's see. Instead of sub-object, we're going to be using sub-object j instead of sub-object a. And see, j to string sub-object j, sub-object j. Just replace all this. If sub-object j is an instance of an object, I believe, let's see, we have 4, which ends here. 1, 2. Here's a little trick. I like to count my brackets like this. So we start here, we have 1, 2. Then we have an end bracket, so it's back to 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 0. That's just the way I like to do that. And if it's an object, we'll do this with J. Let's go ahead and try that. You can see we're getting an error. Null is not an object. We should go ahead and put in this other line of code here, which was before. If sub object J does not equal null, we want to make sure we don't have any issues with that. We'll need to add that another bracket. All right, let's refresh it and see what we get. Awesome. So now we have so we're looking at our project items. We now have our methods for that. We have add comp, add folder, linear blending, all this stuff. I actually think some of it might be getting confused with the other stuff. So one thing we might want to do is color code this. Now, let's open up our source here. And I'm trying to decide, how are we going to style this? I think we need to, instead of just have a global class for each method and function and property, we need to have the subclasses as well. So we use method class, method function, and property class. And as we go in here, we'll say sub method class, sub method function, and here we'll have sub method class and sub method function. We also have this on the outside. This is sub, single sub, and this is normal property class. Now, I guess we could do this inline. Can you, I need Sublime for this. Can I do an HTML file and then totally inline all the CSS? Can I just do, instead of linking it, can I just do full on inline, something like, I'll have to Google this. W3 inline CSS. Not inline block, but can I do this inside of an HTML file? That's what I want to know. Say like style tag is equal to all this. I don't know how this works. It's been a long time since I had to use inline CSS. I think I have to define it specifically like this. Background colors, light blue. Doesn't like that though. Why you gotta be so difficult? So I can do it with JavaScript, but okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make a CSS file. We're gonna say method class, method function, property class, and then we'll make each one of these for sub method function, sub property class. Then we have sub method class, and sub method function. We're just gonna color code these for now. So background, I should probably switch to CSS for some help. Background color, we'll make this, let's make it lighter as we go deeper. So we'll set this to be like 15, 15, 15. Make sure the color of the text is white. I'll just paste this in each of these and adjust it. So for this one, well, for now we'll just do it based on if it's a subclass or not. We'll do 30, 30, 30. And like 50, 50, 50. That might be pretty close to gray, so we'll set this text to be black. And this is stored where again? My desktop. We'll just say styles.css. Now we need to include this, so I'm just going to use this as a reference. And yeah, we'll just add this HTML file.writeLine. And we're going to want references style sheet called styles.css. See if this works. All right, so now these are a little bit more defined. We need to set the overall background to be different to match what we want here. Just say HTML background color, kind of like the After Effects default kind of stuff. And I guess by default, then we're going to want most of the colors to be in the gray spectrum. Run that, refresh. Now we're getting somewhere. We have a little bit more discernment of what is different. It's not the prettiest, I gotta say. Honestly, to make this better, we'll just do W3 Google Fonts, and we'll pick something nice. Anonymous Pro looks good. Just be nice and quick about it. We'll add this to our HTML file. And we'll add this to our CSS body. Now we run this, make sure it's saved. Have a nicer font, which is actually looking a lot better already. Now, I don't want to go like too crazy in making this amazing. Part of it is a tutorial, so you can go off and try it out for yourself. I do also want to try it in a different application. Let's make our H3s humongous. Because these are our titles, I believe, or what do we have? H1 is for the app. H3, H3. Let's set our font size of our H3 to be like, let's try 48 pixels. I believe we shouldn't have to rerun this. There we go. And then we'll make the font size of all of our divs maybe 16 pixels. A little bit smaller there. This makes it a little bit more discernible as to what goes with what. You can see we have a couple of weird issues where it just displays numbers. You can see we have a couple of weird things. Like here we have our project items, but then we have our render queue items. So it gets a little bit confusing. You know, I gotta hand it to the object model viewer. It's a nice piece of organizational stuff. But I'm gonna keep grinding and working on this and see how we do. Let's try and do this in Premiere. See what's possible. So views gives us 0. What happens if we look at the viewer object? It might just be giving us that because the viewer object is number 0. Let me now try with Premiere. Fingers crossed. I tried to actually make one when I launched this with extendscript. Now I'll try it with Premiere. Null is not an object. It shouldn't be. App? Do I need to put like an overall check? Why is this undefined? App should be referring to any application. Application. App. App. App name is not always appears to be the property. So maybe there's one limitation. Let's just manually set this to PR. We're still gonna get null is not an object. Okay, let's set an if. Say if app I is not equal null. And that's like the whole shebang. Did that work? Sweet. So it seems with some modifications, you can start getting this to work for other applications. We may need. I'm trying to decide if instead of doing like this if-else infinite regression thing, if we need to do like a do-while loop. But this is getting sort of close to how we want it to be, where we have everything organized in this manner. And the ultimate goal of this is because if extendscript is ever fully phased out, I want people to have access to all that it had to offer. My biggest reason I'm an extendscript maximalist is because the object model viewer makes things so much easier to navigate all of the built-in properties. And I'm pretty sure it reads them in directly the same way I'm trying to read them in. It just does it in a much better way. And I'm also trying to decide what's my stop point for this script. I want to go ahead and try it. Let's try an Illustrator. And we're probably going to get something like app name is not valid. So let's just make sure this says AI and AI. And at least this will have something started for us. It won't be perfect, but we've come quite a ways in getting this starting to be set up. So I don't think we need to load up a document. We can just run this. No such element. Maybe I'll load something. Just, I don't, is there an Illustrator scripting guide? Yeah. Application. It should give us a whole list of stuff we can deal with. Illustrator error occurred 2072. Doesn't like sub-objects. There's probably a whole bunch of cases we haven't accounted for. So there's another problem. Some applications appear to have issues with this way this is set up, but let's just keep it focused on After Effects then. For the point of this tutorial, what are we at? We're at 46 minutes. I'm probably about to call this good, and you guys can take a look and see how I update this over time and even contribute your own ideas. Sort of the good point about having this channel is that I can call upon people who know different things about programming than I do that may benefit the creation of this. So right now, this is definitely the best for After Effects. Really, it's just about going certain levels deep. If you have an idea of how I can better do it, leave a comment down below. But I think I'm going to call that good, and let's go ahead and push this. Some updates. Looking better. Alright, that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. And again, I encourage you, submit revisions, ideas. We definitely could probably rework this to not use just if-else's, because we got to go deeper and deeper to a depth of probably like 5 or 6 to get down to layers and stuff. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments or leave them on GitHub. If you enjoyed the video, hit the thumbs up button. Down below, hit subscribe and the bell icon to let me know that you enjoyed this video and that you want to see more videos like this where we recreate something, do coding challenges. Sometimes coding challenges are very succinct and perfect, and I create something from scratch that works perfect. Sometimes they're going to be a little bit more vague, where you just get to see the process of how I make things. And in this case, I would say it's a moderate level of success. It's not perfect, needs a lot more work, and it just kind of gives you an idea of my workflow, what's possible, and what you can do yourself. Make sure you follow us on GitHub in the description. Check out the code for this. Again, any help is appreciated. Submit a pull request, clone the repository, and try it out for yourself. Make it work for other applications. And in the description of the video, follow us on Instagram for other live updates. Also, you can join our Discord server and get help with scripting, extensions, plugins, expressions, and much more. And if you'd like to become a channel member, you can get cool perks and to help support us out financially. Link in the description for that. You can become a member, supporter, premium supporter, or VIP. Thanks again for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.